do you want to stick in comic book? If someone was like, hey, there's a Marvel movie, there's a DC movie, would you? Is it the same thing? Depends on the role.
Depends on the role. Depends on the character, the comic. I'm open. I'm open to jumping into any of those sort of sets. Obviously, I've done a lot of stuff that's been heavily CGI. But thankfully, Umbrella, the CGI isn't as massive as something like Marvel or DC. And one of the things about any of those properties is I want to feel like there's danger. Like Logan, for example, is a great example of a comic book movie where you felt they were mortal. And so when you start watching some of these great films, or like The Dark Knight, you look at it and they have these really wide perspectives of the world. The boys do it too, that, in terms of like how things are worked behind the scenes, but also are very interpersonal. Yeah, something like that, it would be great. But I'm completely open. I think when the first season of Umbrella came out, I was like, yeah, I don't want to do any more like if this is the last season of Umbrella, I don't want to do any more superhero films. But yeah, it's all about the character.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's usually what I think that people who have been doing this, it's like, I never say never to it. It's just because then there could be something that comes, if maybe there's a role, if you look at it. And I guess that's always the trick, is you could get something. And how would you balance this? Let me ask you this. So let's say there's a role that comes out. It's a bigger role. It's a Marvel role, and it's going to pay you a lot of money,
Yeah.
but it's not it's not that juicy, right? It doesn't have, it's an okay character. And then you get a role that's not going to pay you that much, and it's a really thick role though, and it's going to showcase your best strengths, but they shoot at the same time. Like and you can only take one of these. I guess it's going to depend on director, all those things, but I don't know. It's a tough one, right? Because like it's the Marvel cash, it's the Disney cash. You have that stuff that's in front of you, but then it's that role of how do you do that? I don't know. It's hard for me to fathom it.
Yeah, I mean, I always think of like outside circumstances of like, okay, do I have a family? Do I have kids?
Yeah.
Do I have a mortgage? How are we doing financially? And thankfully at this stage, I don't have much. I have, Umbrella was able to provide me with a home, which is amazing, and stability. And so at this point right now, I would say no to the money. At this point, I would say now, come back to me in 5 years.
Right.
In 5 years, but even if that, like, I believe that, and obviously you're a father of two.
Yeah.
I believe that, like, and I want to be a father in the future. If my kids were to see me thriving through passion rather than through economic gain, then it will do something to them to see the sort of the approach of life and how we approach the arts. So I would, I don't need much. So I personally, I would pick the meteor role. And even if I was like struggling, if I didn't have kids to feed, I would totally.
Right. And it reminds me of like someone like Michael Caine took all those roles for a long time. He did exactly what you just said. But then when he came down and he was able to, he bought his mom a house by doing Jaws 4. And it's one of the worst movies of all time. And he talks about how bad it was. He goes, why? People say, why'd you do that movie? He goes, because I bought my mom a house. That's why.
Yeah. And he's a legend.
The legend. Didn't affect him at all.
You can't, of course.
No. Yeah.
At that point, it's just, yeah.
Yeah.